Hello, everyone. I have a very, very special interview today with one of my favorite players in the UK, and that is the man, the myth, the legend. It's Herve Bavazzano. I'm really, really privileged to be chatting to Herve. He is a slightly retired player, shall we say? But Hervé has been a major influence not only on my game, but on other people's games within the UK. And this is a fantastic opportunity for me to dig a little bit deeper into Hervé and your history and where you go from here. So let's start with
Yeah,
where did you first discover pétanque? Obviously, you're French.
yeah.
You probably grew up with a bull in the womb. I don't know, but tell us what
I
happened.
probably did actually. And first of all, thank you. I love the myth, the legend aspect on it. That was quite cool. Retired. I retired? I don't think I've ever announced a retirement on this. I think I posed it. I think that's probably the best probably way to describe it. I've played a lot less, and certainly not in the UK since 2013. There's reasons for that. We can probably talk about it as well on that later. But I'm sure we come across that. But let's talk about this actually in the first place. How did I get to the games? Well, I think I'm born where the game was invented in La Ciotat. So Kevin, it's pretty obvious if you are in that town, you will play pétanque. In fact, no, pétanque is a national sport in France, considered as a sport. When I was young, it was the fourth actually largest sport in France, and the first what we call sport loisir, with I think at the time hundreds of thousands of actually of licensed members on that. La Ciotat is impossible to literally to survive if you don't play pétanque. You will know somebody who play pétanque. You have pétanque pieces literally everywhere, and where I'm born in some cancer house and various places, and the first thing you have is literally like pétanque pieces everywhere, and you have competitions all the times. My dad was a very good pétanque player, so I, from a very very young age, he was someone who always inspired me. So I always used to go to watch his events. I mean, you will know in Marseille we have like Marseille, La Marseillaise and
Yes.
another Jeu Provençal, which is like a very important game, and you had this massive event also called Le Provençal.
Yes.
My dad happened to be quite good at that, performing quite well. So in those events. And I still remember some of those games where actually like he went to play like some last 16 in La Marseillaise, which you watch on TV and you think, wow, at the time you used to go there and say, oh, that's your dad playing there doing this. So that's very inspirational. And then actually all my mates started to play pétanque. So as football and pétanque were the two dominant sports. And football was throughout the year and pétanque was just what you do in the summer. From June to September, that's it.
Yes.
So I've done that from a very young age. Loved it. And you find yourself pretty much like, actually from a very young age and just to throw thousands of balls literally every day. And that's what you do, seriously.
Wow.
And then you realize you can make money from this as well. So from a very young age, I think at the age of 15 and 16 and 17, I made more money playing pétanque in the summer than I played than I did actually when I even worked at 18. And trust
Wow.
me, it was a big dilemma in my family. Is well, I can literally make more money by playing pétanque and playing literally almost two competitions a day. And you were, and obviously you were not winning all the times, but at least about 30% of the time, I was definitely getting into the money. And my mother very wisely said, "Well, son, you need to understand what work is all about." So thank goodness she did that. And afterwards, basically, I came to the UK, met my wife in at university, and I came to the UK and I was playing football and I was a paid footballer in France, so I was pretty good at it. That paid for my entire university, so I guess that was I was doing the right thing.
Wow.
And then I came to the UK and football was definitely an option because the work I had, and I decided to drop by to one of the pétanque places, and I was like, oh, they play pétanque, and it was actually a national event, and I was like, oh, actually they were not that good, so I was like, I could do something here. So I decided to go back in France, grab the ball, my pétanque balls, and next trip I came back with my pétanque balls, and here we are. So,
Wow.
so
What year
then,
was that?
I was in 2000s. I arrived in 98, but I started to play around the 2000s.
Okay.
I remember actually like I went to an event in Luton, and as I don't know if you remember, Luton
I do.
had this incredible white piste behind this sports center
Yes.
with the highest wind level in the UK. And if it was raining, it was absolutely torrential. And I went on that day and I was like, they're crazy, these people, like literally with so much rain, so much wind, but they seems to enjoy and had a smile on their face. So I thought, well, I might as well join them. So next thing you know, I dropped to Harrow
Oh,
and
yes. Yeah.
Harrow Pétanque Club, and I dropped there. And I remember actually there was a David guy, which Dave Freeman, which basically actually was there, and it was quite funny. He said to me, he said, so I literally arrived. I went to the social club. He said, "Oh, are you new?" I said, "Oh yeah, I mean just to know, I want to know if people play and things." And they had a game this evening, and he said to me, he said, "Well, if you're any good, you can play with me, you know."
That's Dave. Yeah.
And you will probably laugh when I hear it because that's a true story. And I think I pretty much won all my games that night. And I did actually play with him, actually, as a matter of fact, actually, and he was brilliant. And I had a great time as well.
Oh,
So
that's important.
so
I've
that
had
was
many a game with you and against you at Harrow, and fond memories of that club and you running competitions and
that's right. I did.
just doing such a remarkable job. I mean, it
Yeah.
was. I don't think the club exists anymore, which is pretty sad.
So I heard actually it's a great shame because I had fond memories of Harrow
Yeah.
and we've done some amazing things. And I was talking to Nick Good Hardcore recently at another event in the UK, and talking about it. And yeah, we've done some incredible things there.
Yeah. Yes.
Some of those actually August Petanque international Petanque tournaments that I used to run.
Yes.
Thanks to the Harrow guys, by the way, for the help
Yeah.
was amazing. I think, we had some, we were for one of the first, well, there were some big events with international teams, but, for a time, the period of time that we couldn't attract those big guys. And thanks to my international presentations and connections, I was able to bring like guys from Monaco and many other teams that,
Yeah.
the Danes were also coming quite a lot because of the relationship they had with the Turners, for example,
Yes.
from Kent. And we were able to bring loads of teams from international pedigree, the Belgians and others. So that helped to contribute to the rise of standards in the UK. I think that was
Definitely.
amazing. So that's what we
Definitely.
hope to achieve, and we did a good job.
I remember qualifying as GB1 there in Harrow. It was one of
Hmm.
my favorite things. And then again with a separate team qualifying as GB2
Yeah,
back in the
there you
day
go.
when we used to play North Seas.
That's
And
right.
yeah, I have some very fond memories of winning at that particular
Yeah,
club. It was brilliant.
and you talk about qualifying. I think that was definitely one of the highlights of the season. There is never quite a feeling of qualifying. You were judged the entire seasons in qualifying. And then also you mentioned that quite recently, actually, I picked a picture of my first North Sea tournament. Actually, it was in Cardiff, and it was spurred so much memories. I actually remember a game where we were 12-0 down with the Jamisons because I used to play with, and
Yeah,
and we managed to turn it around actually and win the game. And the guys, I think it was the Swede guys, which I thought the guys were going to throw themselves in the water or something like. It was just like one of the things you never do. And but it brought some really great memories. Obviously, like thinking about Lee as well. So it's there's some good stuff in there. Yeah, but
definitely.
bring you a smile on your face, that's for sure.
That's one of the things with
Yeah,
petanque. It's quite a unique sport where you can have memories solidified and you can recall them as if they were yesterday
yeah.
and regale people and tell people and other people from different sports they just don't really get it
No,
the
of course,
excitement
that's
and the
it.
thrill and the pressure
Of
and
course.
yeah it's brilliant. So I mean obviously you've played at the highest level in the UK and at
Hmm.
a very high level in France. So
Sure,
and as you said, you made some money when you were younger.
absolutely.
So what inspired you to aspire to that top level? Was it your father? Was it the other team members? And certainly when you came to the UK, was it because it was very easy and the people in the UK weren't so good?
Well, it wasn't easy to qualify, that's for sure. Because people were good. I mean, the majority of people were probably I say below average of what you will find in France, but the very top end is very, very high quality. Like, if you, in particular, in the days where you had to represent GB. So, it was very competitive with Paul Bond or the people from Wales or the
Yes,
team.
Neil Phillips
And
and
yeah, exactly. All those guys, and it was really hard. So, what inspired me to achieve a high level? I'm very driven by performance, generally speaking. What I do, if I do something, I'll try to do very, very well and understand, how do you do to get to the top. So whether it's my work or whether it's actually sports in pétanque or actually what I do today, which is running, really.
running.
And you and I share a lot in common on that side. So, you
Yes.
know, I was pretty much center back of football, so you probably know I'm not really actually an endurance guy, but
Yes.
my objectives were to do really well in running, and I still, and have to achieve some great goals in that side, and I still try to improve all the time. So same in pétanque as well.
Yeah.
Pétanque, I was good, but not probably the best, and necessarily not the most gifted out there. But I was really hard worker, and also
Yes.
actually I try to use my brain, perhaps sometimes a lot more than perhaps other people. Uh,
Yes.
and I understood the most important thing was to work on your weaknesses.
Thank you.
Right.
And to ensure that basically actually you could improve your game all the times. And so in terms of actually getting to a top level in the UK, it's not easy. It takes
Mm.
time, it takes dedications. And I remember 2007 when we first qualified with Jerome and also Chris and Ness for the first World Championship,
Mhm.
Pattaya in Thailand. I think we got close for about 2 or 3 years before that. But I think probably the last year before that time, my son was born in 2007. I think this is probably the year where I've put the most amount of dedications to it. And every day I used to come back from work, and I used to basically go to basically actually to the Petanque club next door in Burnham, and I used to literally play all the times, like an hour, 2 hours. And just back to what I used to do during the day, I was very dedicated to optimize my games on every single thing. At the time, I was playing more middles, so I was literally trying to, like conditions every part of it. But it's literally working on your weaknesses. What are the parts that you're not very good at? What are the parts you can make better? And reinforcing your strength all the time. So again, it's what you do to get to the very top. But
Mm.
inspirations, is trying to always do something that you haven't done before and you didn't think it was possible. It was very possible in the UK to get to a world championship. If you are French, like this is nearly impossible. I mean, this is pretty much impossible. If
It's
you,
it's
you
it's
know,
often
you
been
know,
said, and I play a lot in France, and I'm a
yeah,
member of Cherbourg, and lots of people, I think, including yourself, have said to me that it's harder to win a department championship than it
oh,
is to win a
absolutely.
world
Oh,
championship.
absolutely. At that time, the quality is incredible, and basically it's the quantity of quality that you get. You got so many good teams in one place, one times. And that's why also so many of the French teams come to the UK and generally do very, very well. But in terms of the inspirations, in 2007, my son was born, so there's a higher motivations to make other people proud. And also, like I said to you before, I said, what the first thing is, we are a Petanque family, and my dad was a big inspiration to me. So obviously, to do well at that level and to go to a world championship, so you can go to his friends and say, oh, by the way, my son is going to a world championship. It's a pretty
Yes.
amazing feeling. So you basically, that gives you a super motivations. But ultimately, actually, I'm a passionate pétanque player, at heart. And you're a kid and you're born with basically actually with pétanque in your hands. My first Marseillaise, I was 6 years old. So and I
And
still
you
have.
played last year with your family, if
I did actually. I
I'm
played
right.
last year with my family. We were only available for a day because my brother's got work commitments who prevents me
Yeah.
to with my brother and my uncle, and we did our 3 games, which is actually some good teams. We lost the last one, which we had to in a third game, and but that was enough for us, and
Yeah.
because I don't play every day, sometimes after a certain number of games in a day, I tend to I tend to feel it's time to leave it there and to go back into the running these days. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think more, the last time I went to a park already actually in June, I did actually a tempo session there as opposed to playing pétanque. So that tells you basically my motivations at times. So yeah, so that's the motivations why we did that. But yeah, the first big achievement was to be, to go to the world.
Yes.
And I qualified actually for that one in Burnham, in front of my wife and my newborn child. That was pretty special.
I'm
So
sure.
that was
Yeah.
good.
Well, you mentioned about training and
Yep.
obviously playing Marseillaise very young and playing as well as we discussed last year. But training and running is one thing because you run tempo runs and you do
Yeah. Yeah.
these different pace things, long, slow runs, everything, as you and I know. When it comes to pétanque, I'm really interested because you said that you used to train an hour, 2 hours leading up to that big qualifier with Chris and Ness, who are
Yeah.
outstanding players and living in
Sure.
France now, and also with Jerome, who's another phenomenal player,
Sure.
Jerome Rousseau.
Absolutely.
What did your training regime look like? What, apart from focusing on maybe the things that you weren't necessarily so good at, and especially being in the middle, because you're going to have to be pointing, you're going to have to be shooting, you're going to have to be lobbing, you're going to have to be rolling, maybe knocking ball around us. You tell me,
Yeah. So
what did it
first
look
of all, I
like?
think, you mentioned like training leading to an event. I would train. I would take the training very seriously. I would train. In fact, the most amount of training I would do in particular is almost like when you consider this to be the off season. So you build up to the season. That's what I used to do back in the days where I was really invested to optimize the game and try to reduce the margin of errors on this one. So if you look at it, for example, in 2000, pre-2007, pre-2011, 12, which is when we qualified for the other major Euro and World Tournament, it's basically I would almost start basically the seasons, and the qualifiers will always be around May, June times. I will literally start in September. Like it's August, September. You start there and you build up. And you will try, because you don't know what's going to happen in May. You don't know what conditions you have. So ultimately, the best time to optimize this is when actually the weather is pretty crap.
Yeah,
You don't know what you're going to get when the terrains is pretty much like the terrains are complicated.
yeah,
And what I would do is that, if our game was based on a bit at a time with Jerome, basically me in the middle, but otherwise it was pointing with Sofiane and Jerome, for example. But at heart, actually, when I was young, I was a shooter, as much as it might surprise. But that's what I used to do. And even when I came in the UK, I played with Michel, for example, Castagnu, and I was shooting. And
yeah,
we know how great Michel was, on
yes,
shooting. But the first couple of seasons I was very decent. But then I realized I could win games by just pointing. So if I could destroy literally shooters in the UK by
yeah,
just pointing, in particular, taking the cost 9 meters further and in complex terrain and have great lobbing actions and great reading of the play. So I used to really focus on trying to literally like train on the most complex terrains, which gives basically the most challenging place, and being consistent. And the one, and ultimately you have to do the basic well. And one of the things, for example, in pointing that I found amazing in the UK versus, and still today, you probably go to, and I've seen this in recent events which I went to, because the terrain looks pretty much all the time the same at most of the times, but definitely not when you play abroad or in elsewhere. The landing spot is the most critical place. So
yeah.
you got to know exactly where you want with basically your lob and your expectations of how long you will take based on actually the way you release the balls and what you expect to do. And in the UK, like people throw the ball just like they'll throw anything, and
Close their
especially
eyes and throw,
yeah,
literally.
exactly.
Yeah.
And they expect that they will get consistent all the time. So I used to be so precise, and I used to reduce every time. It's basically the landing spot, and I used to absolutely always focus on how small can it be, literally to a point almost I would want to hit a coin literally
Yes.
every time, all those things. So I was trying to do this, and of course, the hard, the further it is, and of course, the higher, the most difficult it is. And also, actually, the most complex, the type of positioning and balls that you put around, and you will be obviously find that the most complex it will
Mm.
be to manipulate and obviously to spin the ball, from inside to outside and everything else. You will literally simulate every single basically positions on that, and you will do it times and times again. And you have a regime of saying, right, today I'm just going to do this.
Yes.
And then tomorrow I'm going to do this. And then actually the next day I'm going to combine the both and I'm going to basically repeat. And you will do this. literally, rather than just like playing games or
Throwing
just
ball up,
you would just train like
pointless.
you would
Yeah.
train in football or in golf or in any sport. You would train for a specific shot all the times. And that's what basically like all the top sports do. And like if you look at golf, for example, they will literally train so many times. When you see the guy coming out of the literally next to the tree and taking the shot and just curving it and because they've done it 10,000 times, and we only play the games a very sort of amateurish approach when you think about it, and we just really have a high degree of risk because we don't really know where we're going to land, and even if you land outside of that, you might still get somewhere. So you want to remove that sort of like element of unpredictability, and that's what I used to train for. So I was trying to be clever in the way I trained to be better on that side,
Perfect.
and then every shot you're trying to optimize it. Um, there's one thing in 2007, that's funny one, this one. So when you train for different things. In 2007, I went to the Worlds and there was one guy, which was a guy from Tahiti, great teams, which we beat in 2000, actually in 12 in a World Championship first game, which actually, by the way, was the only time you could actually bet on pétanque. I didn't bet on myself. First round, we actually won, should have. So that was a good thing. But this guy in 2007 destroyed the French team, and the entire team destroyed the French team. It was phenomenal how they worked, and he only literally threw with three fingers, like
Interesting.
three fingers, and he just threw the ball in the air with a lot of spin, and the terrain was just like a minefield. You could not get a worse terrain than this. I mean, you will land, you will literally go 1 or 2 meters on the side. You have no idea where you land. But the way he was doing it, just like a golf ball, the landing would be so like straight, like it would be like dropping like a stone that you would crush the impact and it would just basically actually stay there. And the way he would do it, and he used to do it time and time again with such a great level of consistency. So I came back to the UK. I was like, okay, I'm going to try that. And probably out of maybe actually 100 people who are watching the guy, maybe you have like three guys who decides to do it, and maybe out of three guys decides to do it, there's one guy who decides to do it really well, and that guy is going to get a lot better. So then I realized basically actually that I could develop a very, very high lob, a lot of speed, which then suddenly actually could give you a very significant competitive advantage. So then I started to develop that shot a lot better than probably anybody else. And people are thinking, oh, how does that work? Well, how does that work is before I tried it in the game, and certainly in the pressure game, and certainly at a pressure time, I had to do it 10,000 times in my
You do.
backyard with the worst environment and repeating it until it was perfection, perfection, perfection. And it worked. And so if anybody wants to do a lob and they want to try, that's the three, or actually probably what it is, it's actually like inside of the hand like this, where you release it literally sideways. You can do it, you can try it, and you might land short so a few times initially, but when you get it right, the ball will land like a stone and
Wow.
it won't go anywhere else, and it's amazing. It's phenomenal. It's quite impressive as well.
I think I'll take you up on that.
Yeah,
Next
sure.
time I see you, yeah. That's
Maybe I'll
one of
do a
the,
video of one day for your channels and I'll
that
show you
would be
how
that
it
would be
works. No,
fantastic.
so
Yeah, you
it's
you
pretty cool.
coaching the coach.
It's pretty,
That would be,
it's pretty cool, I have to say.
yeah, that's a. I think the only person I've seen myself, Bruno Le Bosquiat, um,
Impossible, yeah. He
who
does that, yeah.
excuse my pronunciation, but his lob is
It's phenomenal.
inspirational. It's just
It's
up,
pretty,
lands,
yeah,
doesn't move.
it doesn't move at all. And it does it differently, but how it does it, you're gonna have to study it and have a look at whether you're able to do that or not. It's another matter. But the main thing is you gotta see something.
Mm.
And like you're a coach and I coach athletics as well. So you got to look at it from a different angles and whether actually like what the person truly does. And once you see that, you're like, okay, let's just like explore how you could improve that skill because it becomes skills.
Yes.
And then you repeat it, repeat it, repeat it with consistency on that, and it's phenomenal. And
I
say
think
what?
that's one of the drawbacks and one of the things that I encourage people is if I use myself as an example, I remember back in the day, my lob wasn't so good, and I remember saying to myself for one season, all I'm going to do is every time I point,
Yeah.
I'm going to lob, and I will lose most games.
Yeah.
And it does not bother me because I had to learn to
Yeah.
lose before I could learn to win. I was discussing this with Matt
Cool. Same.
Blyton yesterday, and it was a whole season of pain. But at the end of it, I actually had a pretty good lob, and that worked quite well. And then the
Yeah.
next season, it was much better. And I think that application is lacking in a lot of the fun players, the people who just turn up on Sundays, they play in the week. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but you can't expect your game to go up to different levels unless you've established a floor, a a degree of excellence that you want to achieve, and then you have to raise that floor each time. And you've obviously been very, very good at that through your application and your dedication. So chapeau.
Yeah, no,
So,
no
yeah.
worries. It's thank you. And like ultimately, there's one thing is you can try to qualify for a particular event, like World Championship or whatever it is, because that's the aspirations, that's the ambitions. Certainly, it was mine. You're trying to qualify for that, but the most important thing is you got to look serious, and you're going to look one of the best. And why not? And
Yeah.
it's just like running or the sports. If you put a hard work and if you understand the best technique, you like go, for example, you can realize some incredible things.
Yes.
Um, you know, I was, I had what we call address, had a very good accuracy when actually I was young, in
Mm.
particular. And probably sometimes, you have the innocence of and the confidence of the youth as well, which you do, but that only can take you to a certain level. So afterwards, you need the hard work. No,
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, when you were younger, throwing thousands of ball
yeah,
every week, it's going to give you the results that you want. And I think one of the main flaws in the UK game is a lot of people do practice, but it's an aimless practice without,
it
as
is.
you mentioned,
It is.
specific situations, scenarios, rehearsals, going back on poor ends
It
that didn't work out, analyzing them. Why didn't they work out? And you were always very gifted with that.
it is. And you can see even actually when people practice before competitions, you
Yeah.
know, and the way they practice is like throwing balls, getting the hand to sort of like to warm up and all the rest, the rhythm and all those things. But ultimately, they're not practicing to actually to be in the game, mindsets.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that we can talk about, but ultimately, basically, actually, like practice is fundamental. Quality of practice is fundamentals, and I think
Exactly.
you got to look at it. So if you're looking from a high level performance, quality of practice is paramount. So
So you mentioned mindset there, and I'm very interested in that from my own perspective, but also for the people who are watching. What would you work on, and how did you develop that? Because you have a very, very good, solid mental game where
yeah,
not many people are going to phase you. You can get involved with the banter, but still be very much on
yeah.
top of your game and very much able to adapt to circumstances and stresses and pressures. And any tips that you can give us on that or how you develop that?
Well, I'm glad this is how you came across. I mean, first of all, tell me one player which is not going to be nervous. And that's okay to be nervous.
Yeah.
In fact, anything that you do, would you an interview, what you're always going to be nervous. If you're not nervous, you're lying to anyone. So first of all, you accept that things might get a little bit daunting at times, and sometimes that some pressure environment in basically in the petanque environment might be the case, but that's great. You need that to develop. You need to embrace it. And I said I like performance. I work in a revenue generations performance space. So I manage a lot of people. So I've always been driven to trying to drive the highest performance in anything that we do. So you trying to find all the techniques allows you to do this, and mental techniques are very very important too. So I read a lot, and one of the reasons also actually why we qualified ourselves in 2011 was for something I read, which was called Bounce. It's by Matthew Syed.
I
Great
know
book.
it.
Um, it's one of the best books that basically if you are aspiring to be the best at a particular sport or any sport, you need to read that book. It's a great book.
Yeah.
And one of the things basically actually in there was talking about the notion of choking. And so that book is great, talks to you about the 10,000 hour quality of practice and the environment and everything else. And that's right. And that is completely spot on. But ultimately, it talks about choking and talking about how people get so much pressure and stress. And he relates his own experience, but you can see it all the times. And
Mm.
pressure is a leveler. So when you go to the highest competitions, like you might not be that great, but if you play at your highest potentials, you might be a lot better than people which have high potentials but might feel the pressure and level down. So that's the kind of things that you can anticipate. And one of the things in there is that you got to put things in perspective.
Exactly.
It's only a game ultimately. When I first started to play pétanque and or if I'm running or football or whatever you want, ultimately basically actually it's only a game. And
It's
it's actually
interesting. Yeah.
only yeah,
Yeah. So
and it's only the first time is what's the worst going to happen?
we're not at war throwing actual grenades at each other.
Exactly.
We're
And
not playing for a row of houses. It's
yeah,
fun in most instances.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the principle of actually of if you got something to lose, you are going to be stressed.
Hmm.
But if you got something to learn, you're going to embrace it. So in pétanque or anything, you always say, I'll say to myself, you either win or you learn.
Exactly my phrase. I use it all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're going to learn something from this, and I'm glad you do, because you learn some things, and why should you be stressed? The other thing, and this is where we had probably the biggest game changer actually in 2011. So if in 2011 anyone didn't qualify, because we did with Jerome and Sofiane, and by the way, it was a 2-year qualifications. You had to qualify, and then you had to make basically actually the top whatever 24 whatever in the Euros to be able to automatically qualified for basically actually the World Championship in France, which happened to be in Marseille. So I was like incredibly actually interested to be there, and I was desperate to be there. So it was the big things for them. We realized that probably, arguably, we had probably one of the best teams, or you would say best team individuals. Probably Sofiane was probably at his peak.
Yeah.
Jerome was pretty much still up higher there, and I was, in good shape. So
Yeah.
mentally, we were probably not the best. We
Okay.
had the best team, and probably in a relaxed environment, we're cruising all the time. Back qualifications and all the rest will probably go and perform really, really highly. But when it came to pressure, suddenly actually we froze, or the team
Mm.
froze. So I in 2009 and 2010, this is what happened. So I was trying to find the solutions to that, and I was reading that actually that came when Rory McIlroy was at Augusta, and you probably remember that in
Yes.
2011, I think he was in around April, and he on the last round he tanked, completely tanked. And Matthew Syed came up basically in one of those particular paper I was looking at, and it must have been the Times because I think he's a columnist, he used to be a columnist there. And he said, "Oh, by the way, this is what basically is described in the books, Bounce, which is I wrote, and he said it's the principle of choking, and that's what you have." And so I started reading that book, and I realized that that was a principle for us. And when you put so much pressure on yourself because the expectation is so high, and it means so much to you, you start losing basically actually your powers effectively. And
Mm.
unfortunately, yeah, basically that's how pressure gets you. So the most thing is that you got to put things in perspective.
Exactly.
And the other thing as well is like you need to remember it's only a game. And in a book, he said it's only, he described a guy which was doing high skating and all the rest. And it's like, around this like a fast track and things like that. It was like it's only high skating because it is what it is. It's only the game I was playing when I was like 10, 15, 14, and I was enjoying and I was smashing ball every time in the sunshine in front. It's the same game. And the same game I had a smile in my face, but you cannot practice for pressure. It's like, how do you do? So we that particular year, so if anybody wants the answer to how we got there, so I realized after that book that we had to be reminded of that environment. That reminded basically of how to stay and put things in the context. And one of my best friends, Martin Baker, sadly passed away. Um, which was a good player, and we had to feed North Sea, and but not the most gifted, and but one of the most fantastic human being I've met in my life. I said to him, I said, Martin, would you mind being a coach, being our coach? And I think it was the first time probably I've ever seen a coach in a pétanque team. Um, and he was like, why me? And I was like, well, because you're a player that always play under pressure and seems to be doing very well. You always exceeded your skills.
Yes.
You always exceeded things. So I said, would you mind being a coach? And also, actually, you're a very clever man. He had a very successful business and everything else. And I always felt like, he was a very, very intelligent person. And also was never afraid to say the truth. So basically, in that situations, we qualified for the last 16, as always, the last 16, and lots of actually of the teams in the UK probably hopefully will listen to this. And suddenly came the crunch time, like the last 16 and
Yeah.
the qualifier to the last eight, and you have your group. And the first thing is like, who are we playing? We beat those guys. So and then actually the first game, 13-0, lost.
Wow. Wow.
Couldn't play a ball.
Oh,
Not a single ball. Three of us. Disaster. The other team loved it, spanked us. I think it was maybe a Matt Eversden, I think he was in his team. I think if I remember very well on that side. And as always, Sofiane would have a few words to say, Jerome as well. And I would have, probably a few questions in my mind and probably trying to work out and what was happening here. And I was like, here we go again, and that doesn't look very good. So talking about pressure, that was the example where basically actually like we came out of the piste and Martin looked at us and for the first time understood why a month before I said to you, could you be my coach? Could you be our coach? And he looked at us arguing, bickering, debating, as you always do, because now you know that you don't have any other, ammunitions to go. Like the closer to exit that you ever had, your season is almost going to be over. And he looked at us and was like, okay, I get it. And I said, you guys play like if you don't want to be there.
just for fun.
You're not having fun.
Yeah.
You're not enjoying yourself. It's only petanque.
Yeah.
It's only fun. You guys are capable of doing way better than what you've done. You're capable of doing anything, but you're not having fun. You don't have a smile on your face, and you're not enjoying yourself. The pressure got to you. Why don't you just literally play as if you were, that's the first time you picked up the balls, the enjoyment that it gave you. And I was like, yeah, John and I would look at each other and Sophia looks at us, yeah, you're right. We're miserable.
Yep. Been there.
And basically, next thing you know, literally, we went back on a piste, won the next game, won our barrage, qualified for the top eight, won every game
Wow.
convincingly. And then we went to the Euros. And the Euros was another steps in the sense of actually we had another game plan. We lost in the quarterfinals, which was phenomenal at the time.
Yeah, it
Because
is. Yeah.
no British team or English teams at the times were reaching those sort of standards. And I was, again, I like my thinking, I like my strategies. In the book of Barnes, there's another book which is referred. In particular, Barnes talks a lot about Andre Agassi, which I'm a big sort of tennis fan anyway. He was one of my heroes when I was young. So for anybody of your readers or your listeners, he has a phenomenal tennis players back in the 80s, 90s, one of the mavericks, on that side. He used to always inspire me. Best returner, that you ever have in a game.
Yes.
But basically, actually, he was, too quick to trying to close the games. And he had a coach at the times which was not really delivering for him. And he changed the coach. And one of the guys actually that made such a big difference, a guy called Brad Gilbert.
Mhm.
Brad Gilbert basically actually, had a dinner with Agassi, and basically in that book called Open, which is the biography of Agassi, described that meetings as basically actually that explaining the game as, you're trying to sort of like win every point or go for every shot and all the rest. And said you have to win ugly, which became basically actually the name of the book. And the consistency of actually of winning ugly is forcing your opponent to make mistakes. if you always do the right things and you play the right shot and you make them work hard, it's like they have to work really hard to basically actually win the end. For example, in Petanque. So I said to Sophia, and I said, we do the same. We trying to go gun ho. We're trying to really attack everywhere and so on and so forth. But what if we could literally play the game that we only shoot where we need, and we actually try to force the opponent to make mistakes. The more mistakes they make, the more they lose their confidence, the more frustration they have, and the more we can counter them. And that's how we did it. That's how we did it basically actually in 2011. We went to the Euros and we played the groups with that. I think we lost one game only in the group stage. I think there was a 5 or 6 teams at the times. We went into into basically actually the last. So we we're actually in the group to go to I think whatever it is, group of four at the times. We had France and Israel and another team, and we qualified against actually a very good Israel team as well. And we pushed on that side. And actually, we try to apply the same for Italy as well. And it worked for the first 2 or 3 ends. And then, unfortunately, afterwards, actually, the old syndromes of, the pressure. It was like we kicked off. And sadly, Martin, which, was at the time diagnosed with cancer, couldn't come with us. And that was the difference. If he had come with us, honestly, Italy is an amazing team, was phenomenal teams, but I do believe that basically actually we could have basically actually pushed one level up because they were there for the taking. And I'm not saying this because it's back in, but I felt we had the game. It could have clicked. We just in the first like 5 ends were definitely there for the taking. If we had basically actually that element, I think we would have reminder. I think we would have probably actually. Would probably have been different.
I think that section is absolute gold.
Yeah,
It
good.
it really is to win ugly, as you mentioned, to
Yeah,
force the other teams to make the mistakes so
yeah,
that then you can shine because there is a prevalence. I've noticed this. I've suffered with the same things only recently, playing in France a hell of a lot.
yeah,
And I went with an expectation level. And when I didn't meet that expectation level, I put all this pressure on myself. And I disclosed this in one of my earlier videos.
yeah.
And it was only having talked to Steve Dakin in the UK, who's a phenomenal player, and
Mhm.
he and I we chat, we go to Sherborne quite a lot, and he just said, "Look, you're not enjoying it. Just chill out. Just
Yeah,
have fun. Make your practice your
yeah, of
play."
course.
And that if you can make your practice your play, and
Yeah,
it's the same, and you can laugh and you can joke and you can enjoy it, everything just flows.
it does.
You were talking about books. I actually have a big, long list of books. Some of which are I'm going to be doing talks about them. But those two books that I haven't got the Agassi book. I'm going to get that. I have got the Matthew Side book, Bounce. But one that I will recommend to you is by Josh Waitzkin,
Okay.
The Art of Learning. And Josh was, not to go into great details, but
Yeah.
a chess prodigy from a very young
Uh-huh.
age. And it goes into all of his mental processes and his learning and how he learnt to lose and then how he learnt to win and the process over outcome and all of the different aspects that I talk a lot about in my videos. But also then how he totally pivoted and went from chess as a young man to push hands, the
Yeah,
Chinese martial art,
yeah, yeah, of course.
learned all of that. And it's a remarkable book.
Yeah,
But it shows his intelligence that he then contradicted himself later on when he said it's not process and outcome, that you
yeah,
have to have a goal, that you have to have something that you're aspiring to. And you had that. And, this is a very long-winded way of saying you had your goal, you had your floor level, you raised it, then you learned, and then
yeah.
as you learned, you got better, and then as you learned the sneaky little things such as learning to win ugly, it proved it.
It does.
You're the living proof of it and how good it was. So.
And it worked, and it worked at the times. And it was difficult also trying to get team to embrace it because we had to commit to it and actually explain to Sofian why we would do this. Because Sofian is a glory hunter in the sense of actually a glory shot. He takes go for a coach, go for this. I'll, it's like, let's go for that. And you know what? That's part of his the wonderful person that he is, and he
Exactly.
would do it as well most of the times. And but it's learning from him to contain that excitement and do the right things and just really work on that. And then actually, obviously, actually forcing the opponent to make mistakes, and he did actually the work. So. And we did that actually during the qualifiers, and did that also actually during obviously do that, and at the World Championship, it went well until probably the third game, and then suddenly I think the wheel fell off for the reasons that probably we can discuss another times. But I think it's
Yeah.
definitely actually I would say it was definitely the conditions to success.
So, well, amazing insight. So thank you. And now I have seen you on the piste this year.
Yeah, a couple of times.
Is there a motivation? Is there a drive? Is there a
Yeah,
will to return to the game for you? Because you really have one of the best pétanque minds that I've come across in the UK. There's a couple of other great people who I really respect, but you're one of them because
thanks.
your reading of the game is outstanding. And I for one would love to go head to head either with you, we have played together, or against you
We,
again.
we have actually last year, absolutely. It was a great
Yeah.
time, great moment as well. There is, let's say, there's no plan to to play seriously. And I said also seriously to go for a qualifier or to qualify for to represent the England or anything like that. I mean, there's no plan simply because there's no time. I'm very busy with work, but also actually
Yes.
with my other center of interest, in particular coaching and athletics, and actually myself to running a lot. And you know how long it will take to try and to follow your objectives. Actually, I'm trying to pursue more of an English running vest as opposed to basically actually as a master, as opposed to
Wow.
basically actually let's say at the moment basically a pétanque vest as well. But also, I think that it's a big difference as well. These days, I think that something was broken after 2013, the change of qualifier, the qualifying systems and others. And, we've been to, I felt, with the quality of the players out there, I felt like I could have, I've taken it as far as I could for the time being, and I didn't think it was worth it, to spend all these times in a traveling, spending times and days in the UK and not seeing your kids when they're growing and everything else. To sacrifice that for what for something I've done before. So there's no big interest. But I do try to play a couple of times a year, things like that. Somehow, again, just because it's fun, I tend to play a lot better. Back to like the way I was as a kid without any practice, and people are like, "Oh, can you play this?" We're like, "Well, because you're having fun, because you relax, you're just enjoying yourself, and
Yeah.
you put things in perspective." And I love that. And so there is no plan at the moment. Also, actually, I have to say I'm not really on Facebook all the time for what I keep hearing and seeing, and things like that is not always positive. So I try to sort of surround myself or go into sports which are really forward thinking, where it's highly performance driven, and I like the environment I'm in at the moment, but it doesn't mean that I don't like a game. I like a few games from time to time, pushing to see some people and friends, but also to revisit the emotions that it might give you. I always say actually after generally playing like 6 or 7 games, which nearly tend to happen basically in one competitions where I attend. I tend to be exhausted these days. So I think I'm not sure if I could be literally doing so much. But no, it's yeah, you would need something to change. I think you would need to something to give me the drive to be able to actually to go back and spend the times. Maybe in the future, who knows?
Okay.
But so far I've had a good gig so far, and yeah, potentially maybe in the future on that side, or someone who says to me, "I really need something." In this case, I'll be like, okay, if I have a purpose, I might dedicate my times on that. So
Herve,
I
I
was.
really need something.
Yeah, you got to see something in pro. I mean, this is the thing. I remember actually also when I stopped playing with, for example, Jerome or Sofiano, things like that. I played with other players which I felt would benefit from this. And I'm not going to name everybody, but it's good to see how people can play better at times where their confidence is low. For example, maybe actually Sean, for example, Pendergast, for example, that's one of them. on that size. You know, the guy which at the time when I played with him around sort of like 2013, I think we did, you know, a couple of few good events together. It needed that boost, needed that confidence, needed that sort of reassurance that they are good players, that, you know, and sometimes they're not listening to the voices of people that basically people around. Reese also actually before Reese Gould as well was one of them who came out of the game, and you know it's like
Mm.
and you know, it's like you kind of bring him back slowly and you know because you see potentials in players, you know you see that
Exactly.
junior which was excelling, which had great potentials and the character and the behaviors, and you think it's possible to for him to do well. And so yeah, always stuff like that was always exciting, always interesting. But yeah, I needed something more, and at the moment I
Okay.
don't have it, so
Well,
it's okay.
so Herve,
Yeah,
I have about 1,000 more questions that I'd
yeah,
like to ask you, but I want to be respectful of your time.
yeah,
So if it's okay with you,
sure.
I'll end this interview here now
Yeah,
because you've given me some absolute gold, and
very good.
we did have a time limit, so
Yeah,
we'll reschedule. We'll come back for a part two because
yeah,
I know you have a lot to share that you and I have discussed about the English game,
yeah.
about the efforts that you went to and wanted to introduce, and
Yeah.
I think we'll just leave that there as a little teaser for people, and
That's a pleasure. No worries. We do that. Very
we'll
keen.
do that.
Yeah,
And
there's loads of things. There's loads of things to talk about. You made some great questions, by the way, in preparation. So I'm very keen to explore some of them. There's some great stories as well. And so sometimes, like, some people have questions. How did certain things happen or things like that? So I'm very keen to share that. But yes, I do. We did it more times, and hopefully people are still listening to this one.
well,
So,
it's actually a very good point. So if anyone has any questions for Hervé, drop them into the comments
yeah,
after this video. And look, I'll see if I can hit you with some of those questions as well. And
really.
even if some of them are, why did you beat me? You know,
I think you have to say like and subscribe because the people have to come back for more. So
there
clearly,
you
yes.
go.
You know,
I think that's it.
hopefully we'll beat the Barry Scott interview as well, numbers.
That's a great point. We've got Matt Blyton going up today, and we'll have you going up tomorrow.
Surely we're going to do better than Matt Blayton. You know, come on.
Allez,
Respect, man.
gagné.
No. Yeah.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
mate.
much,
Love to see
Hervé.
you. Thank you, guys.
Allez, salut maintenant. Bye bye.
Bye.
That's